know how much money you have, how much you really have, how much money you actually spend every month. And do you have any kind of household budget at all? I'm sure you know that your children are also at school, should be being taught how to manage money to an extent. So do young people. Do our children know how to manage money? If they don't, what will happen to them in the future? Tshepo Kgapane is the partnership manager at WaFunda. They try and teach people how to manage money. Tshepo, good afternoon to you. When do you think we should start teaching our children how to manage money?
Good afternoon, Stephen, to you and the viewers. I think as soon as you can start speaking and walking, you should be playing around with money, learning the basics of counting, and then we move on to budgeting and saving and investing. But really, as a young person's mind begins to think, that's when they should start learning about money and all the important bits around it.
Should you be giving them pocket money as well, so they have something to manage if you can?
Yes, I think it gives them an opportunity to actually have something that they can use. So the pocket money, are they budgeting? Are they saving? Are they making important decisions with it? Do they spend all of it? Do they save some of it? Do they start to think about investing some of it? So I think pocket money is a great way for them to start as well.
I mean, it's really, I suppose, the bigger phrase would be delayed gratification, right? If you can teach your child to eat the vegetables first and have everything that's nice after that, that's a form of saving, and that's really what it's about.
100%. I think parents play a big role in forming, the money personalities of their kids. So the kids are watching what mommy and daddy is doing, how they are spending money, whether they're saving, whether they're investing, whether there's delayed gratification. And so, we've got a big influence on shaping how they will use money as they get older.
We see some schools teaching financial literacy as well. Does that help?
I think to a degree it does help. I think the problem is that it is not comprehensive, it is not relatable, it is not digital. So yes, it's a great starting point, but we need to ensure that that type of content makes sense for young people, that it is gamified, that it is quite fun, that it is interactive, that it is relatable, but it is a great start.
So what kind of conversations should we be having with our children?
I think, the first is around the value of money. What is the value of money, the relationships we have with money, how do we save, how do we budget? So I think that's a great place to start. And then it's to make the conversations about money fun. Gamify it, have games, read some books, do some podcasts. Playing games like Monopoly is a great way to teach young people about money. So it's about the values around money. It's about gamifying it. It's about making it fun. It's about making it relatable to young people, because money tends to be quite boring and dull and very, very serious. And so, you need to remember that you're dealing with a young person and you need to speak in a language that they understand.
I was going to ask you, Tshepo, about the board game Monopoly. I mean, my son always beats my daughter. That makes him very happy, but he takes such big risks. I mean, are we sure that's the right game to play?
Look, I think, even when you get into the world of investing, risk is a big part of it, but it's all about mitigating that risk. And I think as kids get a little bit older, they'll start to understand that there are some consequences to taking certain risks. But I think it's a great way for them to start molding their minds around risks, around where do I put my money, should I save it, should I invest it, what should I be actually doing with it? And then what are the consequences of making bad decisions with our money, which the game can also teach you as well.
One of the things I think that's very difficult, and it's difficult for parents, it's difficult for me as an adult, it's difficult, I think, for children, is that there are so many influences around us telling us to spend. Buy now, pay later. You'll see adverts online for all kinds of electronic things that really, therefore, no one needs. And it'll have a little thing at the bottom. You can have this for just so much money every month. And then my favorite bugbear is cars. I just think we spend so much money on cars. That's partly because they're fun. They go vroom, they go fast, they make you look cool. And yet we end up spending so much money that we don't actually have.
That's so true. Stephen, when we look at some of the data from an insights report that we did recently with some of our Black Bullion South Africa users, that's exactly what young people were saying. They shared with us that debt, store accounts, loans, black taxes, placing a lot of pressure on them. And when you look at three of the major influences that impacts on their finances, there's poor planning, there's lifestyle pressures, there's even online gambling. And I think this all relates to the psychology of money and then the type of relationship relationship that young people and just generally people have with their money. So that's a lot of the stuff that we're seeing. And yes, the advertising is playing a role, and these discounts and savings and all of that, and even online shopping is also playing its role as well.
Tshepo, I mean, there's also the sort of South African reality, and you've already alluded to it. You used the phrase black tax. I mean, just a few moments ago, we were taking live coverage from the VIP Protection Unit case, and the lawyer for one of the police officers, so this is a police officer, he protects the deputy president, was describing what this person owns. He has a salary of 15,000 rand a month. He has a son living in Lesotho who he cares for. He has a brother-in-law that he cares for. He has other family relatives who he tries to buy groceries and school clothes for, school uniforms. I mean, from 15,000 rand a month, Tshepo, no one can save under those circumstances. I mean, that really shows you how tough life is for almost everybody.
Yeah, things are definitely tough. There's a number of things happening in the country as well. You know, there's high unemployment, you know, particularly for young people. There's economic inequality. There's limited access to quality education, which means that people can't get the skills they need to find the jobs that they need, but also there's no jobs to find. So, yes, it's definitely a difficult and tough time, but I still think it's very important that people know how to manage the little they have. The ability to be able to plant that seed, you know, to budget, to see how much money is coming in and going out. Where can you start to make changes? Perhaps you get a second job or a side hustle. What do you do with those little savings? Do you know, invest them? Do you build an emergency fund? So I think it's all about being conscious and very deliberate with your money, whether it's big or small, and planning around it. So a lot of people will say, I don't have anything to save, but they've never ever budgeted, so they don't even know how much is coming in or going out. So what we always say is start with the budget, let it be, you know, a real budget, and then take it from there.
And I suppose, Tshepo, it's easy to say I told you so later, but, you know, people who had gone into this time, this very tough time, with some savings, would it be much easier, you know, find it much easier, they'd be in a much better position than people who didn't. My point is that there will be tough times again in the future, and the planning for that, I suppose, I sound a bit boring when I say this, Tshepo, it starts now.
100%. And that's why it's so important to build an emergency fund as an example. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so you need to have some sort of personal insurance against things that might happen. It might be another scenario like a COVID where you might lose your job, you might have a burst tire or a pothole. As you know, the roads can be terrible. So it's important to always plan ahead, but to also learn from your financial mistakes. Yes, you've made the mistake. What is the lesson, and then how do you make a difference in your relationship with money? Do you budget? Do you set up an emergency fund? Do you try and save as little as you can from your salary? But start to think differently around your money.
Kgapane, thank you. Partnership Manager at WaFunda.